Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Sunday, September 25th, 2022. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Now, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. And don't forget to check out the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown. We go over all the games in Week 3, so check it out. I'll put a link in the comment section below. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Sunday, September 25th. First up, we see the Atlanta Braves taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Charlie Morton and Kyle Gibson are the projected starters for this one. Now, Charlie Morton's got pretty good numbers at home this season, and his Truist Park starts about 84 innings of work, 6-1 with a 2.88 ERA. However, Charlie's on the road in this game, and on the road this season in about 78 innings of work. He's got a 3-5 record with a 5.38 ERA. He's given up 14 home runs, and he owns a 257 opponent's batting average, while at home it's at 190. So Charlie Morton not really pitching too well away from home. And when you look at the Philadelphia Phillies offensively, they've been crushing right-handed pitching. They're number 1 in team OPS against righties in the last month. Isolated power is number 3 in the league during that time. And we saw on Friday night they got to the Braves, Jake Odorizzi, for quite a few runs, 8 earned runs in the early innings. So I don't think they'll get to that many. I don't think they'll get that many runs on Charlie in this game. But on the other side, you got Kyle Gibson, who's not really pitching well himself. His last start against the Blue Jays, he gave up 7 earned runs, 12 base hits, a home run, and only 5 innings of work. So with two pitchers not in the best of form, at least when Charlie Morton's on the road, and with Gibson giving up 4 earned runs or more in 3 of his last 4 starts, I've got to go with the over in this game. We got 2 good lineups and 2 starting pitchers that I'm looking to fade here. So give me the over in this Braves-Phillies ballgame. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Christian Javier and Austin Voth are the projected starters. You know, going into this series, if I looked at this pitching matchup, I'd honestly lean towards the Astros. But with seeing how poorly the Astros have done offensively to start this series, we saw them get shut out in the first 2 games of the series, really not do too much offensively. Both starting pitchers in Kyle Bradish and Dean Kremer, outstanding outings. And the Orioles are not completely out of it right now. They are only a few games out from that wild card spot. The Seattle Mariners have been struggling a little bit, so the Orioles feel like they got a shot. And I do think with the you got the Houston Astros already clinched the division, Orioles fighting for that playoff spot. Certainly the motivation is going to go to the Orioles, especially in front of their home crowd, where they played so well at Camden Yards this season. So I do take that into consideration. And, Austin Voth has been somebody that I've been a little bit worried about in his most recent games. He's given up some home runs, not really pitching too deep into games, not really striking out as many guys. But with the Astros struggles against right-handed pitching, I'm just going to take a chance here with Voth and the Orioles getting that 1.5 runs, as they're pretty big dogs even in this game at home. And Christian Javier's been special on the mound this season, that's for sure. A 2.77 ERA coming off another good start last time out. But with his pitch count issues, he doesn't really go too deep into ball games. I think the Orioles, at worst, can get to the bullpen for a few runs and keep this game close, if not win it outright. So give me the Baltimore Orioles plus the 1.5 runs at Camden Yards. Next up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Ross Stripling and Shane McClanahan are your projected starters. Neither starter coming off good outings in their last games. You saw Ross Stripling give up 5 earned runs and 9 base hits, a home run as well, in his 4 innings of work in that 18-11 Blue Jays win against the Phillies the last series. And then Shane McClanahan on the other side faced the Houston Astros in his last game. He wasn't good. 4 innings, 5 earned runs, a homer, 4 walks as well, and only 3 strikeouts. So, it is tough to see which starting pitcher to really trust in this game, but I do think that Shane McClanahan is the better and more talented starter in this game. And when you look at the Toronto Blue Jays, they've done a lot of damage offensively in the last month, but mostly against right-handed pitching, where they're number 2 in team OPS in the last month, while against lefties they're ranked 15th in team OPS. They're still outside the top 10 in isolated power. Their strikeout rate is not too high, but I do think that I think McClanahan, being a strikeout guy, he'll find some missed bats in this game. If he can limit the walks, I think he'll have a good outing, enough to win this game for Tampa Bay. So give me the Tampa Bay Rays on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Adrian Sampson for the Cubbies and Luis Ortiz going for the home team on the Pittsburgh side. Now, Luis Ortiz is pitching pretty well in his first 2 starts at the major league level. 10 2/3 innings, only 1 earned run, no home runs allowed, and 10 strikeouts. Now, the 5 walks allowed is a little bit concerning, but I still think, he's missing a good amount of bats. He faced the New York Yankees last time out on the road and pitched pretty well. So I do think he'll have a solid outing here against a pretty weak Cubs lineup. On the other side, Adrian Sampson's pitching well as himself. I mean, You look at his last 5 starts, he hasn't given up more than 2 earned runs in any of those games. Now, he's pitching better on the road this season than at Wrigley, which he'll be on the road in this game. And he's had, in his last 5 starts, 4 of those games being on the road against the Marlins, Mets, Cardinals, and Brewers. And like I said, he hadn't given up more than 2 runs in any of those outings. And those are some tough lineups with the Brewers, Mets, and Cardinals. So, I think Sampson pitches well. Don't love this Pirates lineup. Now, neither of these bullpens are strong, so when you're taking an under between these 2 teams, it is a little worrisome sometimes in the later innings, but I do think we get under this total. I lean towards the under in the first 5 innings, and I lean towards the under in the full game as well. Next up, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Freddie Peralta and Nick Lodolo are the projected starters. Freddie Peralta returning to the mound after his injury, a 15-day IL spot. He pitched on September 8th against the Giants, only a couple innings, and then was injured in that game. And, he's been injured a few times this season. I don't expect him to go too deep into this ball game. He's having a pretty successful year in terms of his stats so far, a 3.45 ERA. Now, his strikeout stuff isn't as lethal as we've seen it in years past, but still missing a good amount of bats this season. So really nothing to complain about Freddie Peralta's game, and I do expect him to have a solid outing here. The only thing is he's probably not going to go too deep into this ball game. I would expect 4 to 5 innings at the most. He doesn't really pitch deep into games to begin with, and now especially coming off the injury, they'll probably want to limit his workload. But on the other side, Nick Lodolo pitching really well at Great American Ballpark this season. On the road, he's got a 5.63 ERA, but at the hitter-friendly ballpark of Great American, in about 60 innings of work, he's got 82 strikeouts. He's only given up 6 home runs, and he's got a 2.98 ERA. When you look at the Milwaukee Brewers, sure, their numbers are improving against lefties as the season carries on. However, there's still a pretty high strikeout rate, a top 10 in the league in terms of highest K rate as a team in the last month, 25.6%. And their team OPS is outside the top 15. Their isolated power numbers are improving, but not quite there yet. And I think Lodolo pitches well in this spot, and I think he keeps his team in this game. So I'm going to take a shot here with the Cincinnati Reds, the home dog, getting the 1.5 runs on the run line. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Miami Marlins. We're going to see Anibal Sanchez and Edward Cabrera on the bump for this one. Now, I know Edward Cabrera has given up at least 1 home run in each of his last 5 starts, but I just don't trust this Nationals offense enough to take a shot here with them. And I also don't love the fact that Anibal Sanchez is facing the Marlins in back-to-back outings. Now, I got to give credit to Sanchez. He's pitching well overall. He's keeping his team in ball games, and his last start against these Marlins wasn't bad. He went 6 innings, only giving up 2 earned runs. However, he did give up a home run in that game. He only had 3 strikeouts, and the Marlins were starting to get to him as that start continued. A lot of lineouts, a lot of flyouts. They were putting the ball in play and hitting it pretty hard. I do think this is a tough spot here for Sanchez, and it explains why the Marlins are such big favorites. We're not used to seeing the Marlins as minus 190 favorites these days because of how poorly their offense is done, but it is improving as the season carries on, getting some younger guys in the lineup, and they're starting to produce offensively. The pitching staff has been fine this season. The starting rotation, I mean, they've got the Cy Young favorite here in Sandy Alcantara in their rotation, and they've got another young pitcher in here in Edward Cabrera that's also having a solid rookie campaign, but I still think that this offense is good enough here against Sanchez to get the run line cover in the end. So give me the Miami Marlins laying the 1.5 runs at home. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Minnesota Twins. Jose Suarez and Dylan Bundy are the starters. Now, surprisingly, the Angels are actually favorites in this game on the road, but I do understand it, and I agree with it. I think the Angels are playing the much better ball right now. I actually trust Suarez on the bump a lot more than Bundy, and when you look at the Twins' numbers offensively against lefties, they haven't been good. I mean, 22nd in the league in team OPS in the last month. They're the 4th highest strikeout rate in the league against lefties, about 28% exactly against lefties. That strikeout rate is. So I don't like this matchup for him against Suarez. I know Suarez struggled his last time out, but overall he's been solid for the Angels in their rotation with that 4.11 ERA. Not too bad at all. 91 strikeouts and about 96 innings of work is solid for a pitcher like Suarez. So I think he pitches well enough to get the win here for Los Angeles, but I do think his offense is going to help him out quite a bit. Dylan Bundy giving up 6 home runs in his last 3 games against teams that don't really have a lot of power in their lineup, in the Guardians and then the Royals twice. So the Angels lineup has got some pop. They've been doing a lot better, I would say, the last 2-3 weeks or so than they were in the middle of the season. But I do think the Angels grab a win here. So give me the Los Angeles Angels on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox hosting the Detroit Tigers. We're going to see Tyler Alexander and Dylan Cease on the mound for this game. Now, Tyler Alexander's last start was really solid. 7 innings, no earned runs against the Baltimore Orioles. But that's an Orioles team that's really struggling against lefties overall. They've got one of the higher strikeout rates, a pretty low team OPS and isolated power. Now you're facing the White Sox, who have the lowest strikeout rate against lefties in the last month at 15.8%. They've got the number 1 team OPS against lefties in that stretch and the number 3 isolated power. So I don't love this game for Tyler Alexander, who was struggling up until that game against the Orioles. I do think the White Sox get to him. But on the other side, Dylan Cease, I would say in his last 5 games, 4 of those starts have been pretty solid, pretty successful. The one game where he struggled was against the Rockies at home back on September 14th. He gave up 3 earned runs and only 5 innings of work against a Rockies team that doesn't really do too well offensively on the road. So that was a surprise there. But other than that, Cease is pitching well this season. 2.13 ERA, a 1.09 whip, 217 strikeouts in 173 innings. And the Tigers' offense not really trustworthy these days. So give me the Chicago White Sox laying the run line at home. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Kansas City Royals. Luis Castillo and Zach Greinke are the projected starters. I'm going to take the under in this game. I do think Luis Castillo is the better starter in this one, even though he struggled last time out against the A's. He just hasn't had much luck against Oakland this season with his new team, but overall he's pitching really well with the Mariners, and I think he'll have a solid outing here. But Zach Greinke, I don't love to back him very often, but when I do, it's at Kauffman Stadium, and last start wasn't his best. He gave up 4 earned runs against the Twins, but the Royals still got the win in the end, and he's been keeping the Royals competitive in his games at home this year, where he's got a 2.32 ERA, 66 innings of work, only 1 home run allowed. Very impressive stuff there. He keeps the ball on the ground, even though his strikeout stuff really isn't the same these days. Later in his career, at the age 38 season, he still keeps the ball on the ground, and, he gives up a good amount of base hits, but he's able to get out of jams, especially at Kauffman. So I'm going to lean towards the Royals on the run line, especially with how the Mariners have struggled a little bit, and I'm going to lean towards the under in this game as well. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Texas Rangers. Aaron Savali and Cole Ragans are your starters. I think even if the Guardians are down early in this game, their bullpen is good enough, and the Rangers' bullpen has struggled enough for the Guardians to find a way yet again to win this game. And, they've played so many games lately, the Guardians have, in 17 straight days, I believe. There's going to be their 18th game in that stretch with a doubleheader thrown in there. And they've played so well. They've been so successful. They're going to win the AL Central this year, and they're going to be a team to watch out for in the American League playoffs. They've been one of the more profitable teams in baseball. I think they grab another win on the road here against the Ragans and company. So give me the Cleveland Guardians. Not my favorite game on the board, but I got to lean with Cleveland right now with how well they're playing. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Colorado Rockies. Mike Clevenger and Kyle Freeland are your projected starters. Kyle Freeland, an ERA above 5 in his home starts this year. And the Padres are doing well against lefties. They're low strikeout rate, top 10 in team OPS, and top 5 in isolated power in the last month. So I do think that the Padres will be able to get to Freeland and this Rockies bullpen in this game. So I do lean towards the Padres on this in terms of a side, but I actually like the over as the better play. As when you look at Mike Clevenger, he's had 2 appearances at Coors Field this year. One of those was a start, and then one of them out of the bullpen. But he has a 7.36 ERA in those games with 7 1/3 innings pitched, 10 base hits allowed, and 6 earned runs allowed. I can't trust him in this game either, really. So give me the over in this Padres-Rockies ballgame. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Jacob Junis and Dre Jameson are your projected starters. Dre Jameson in his first 13 innings at the big league level, 13 innings against the Padres and the Dodgers. He's had a 1.38 ERA. He's had 12 strikeouts. He's only given up 1 home run and only 2 walks as well. Pitching well, and now you're facing the Giants, who have not really been doing well against the right-handed pitching in the last month. They're outside the top 15 in team OPS, and their isolated power numbers aren't great either, ranked 27th. So I do think Jameson, even though he's going to have some natural regression concerns, I think he pitches well yet again in this spot. On the other side, Jacob Junis is not in good form. His last 2 games, he pitched against the Rockies and Braves, giving up 9 earned runs in about 9 1/3 innings combined. Strikeout numbers haven't really been there. Starting to give up some home runs, at least 1 in 3 of his last 5 games, and the base hits have really piled up for him also. So give me the Arizona Diamondbacks here on the money line at home. Next up, we see the New York Mets taking on the Oakland Athletics. J.P. Sears and Max Scherzer are your starters. Now, the New York Mets at the beginning of the season did not hit lefties very well, but that has definitely changed in the last 30 days, and they were able to get to Cole Irvin, a lefty, in the beginning of this series for quite a few runs early on in that one, and I do think they'll be able to get to J.P. Sears enough to win this game and earn a run line cover, especially with Max Scherzer on the mound for New York. He's been sharp this season, coming off of a fantastic start against the Milwaukee Brewers, where he went 6 innings, no hits, no earned, no walks, and 9 strikeouts. He was basically perfect in that game through the first 6 innings. He didn't go too deep into the game because it was his first start back from an injury. They didn't want to stretch him too much, which you completely understand with the Mets already clinching a playoff spot and looking pretty good in terms of winning the division. You don't want to Max Scherzer's been down for a few times due to an injury. You don't want to push it with him, but I think he pitches well in this game as well. It gives him about 5-6 good innings, and it's enough for a run line cover. So even though the value's not really there because the Mets are huge favorites, I still have to lean towards the Mets laying the 1.5 runs anyway. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. We're going to see Tyler Anderson and Adam Wainwright on the mound for this game. Tyler Anderson, a left-handed pitcher. The Cardinals have crushed lefties this season. They're number 1 in isolated power in the last 30 days. They're number 2 in team OPS against those lefties. So I do think they'll be able to get to Anderson for a few runs, even though he pitched well against the Cardinals earlier in the season. On the other side, we got Adam Wainwright going for the Cardinals. And Wainwright has pitched really well at Busch Stadium, but on the road hasn't been the same. A 4.44 ERA away from home. He gave up 4 earned runs at his last road start against the Padres back on September 20th. He gave up a home run in that game as well. Only 1 strikeout in 6 innings of work. That's pretty concerning when you're facing a Dodgers lineup that's been so good against righties this season. So I'm going to take the over. I think this total set just a little bit too low. Give me the over in this Cardinals-Dodgers ballgame. And in our final game of the night, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the New York Yankees. Brian Bayo and Nestor Cortes are your starters. The Red Sox have been pretty good against lefties lately, and Nestor Cortes hasn't really been pitching too deep into ball games. His last 2 starts only going 5 innings apiece. His pitch count has been getting up there a little too early into games, and with the Yankees bullpen not really being the sharpest, I would say in the last month or 2 months or so, I do think there's some value with the underdog here in Boston. And we know there's no official lineup for this game, so we're just going to have to infer that they're going to be the underdogs. But if Bayo and Cortes are the starters, Bayo's been pitching really well for the Red Sox. Don't let that ERA fool you. It was above 8, I believe, at one point. So now below 5 is a big win for Bayo. And his last start, 5 innings, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts against the Reds. The previous start was against these Yankees. 5 innings, no earned runs. He gave up 3 unearned, but his defense didn't help him there. 6 strikeouts, no home runs. He finally gave up his first home run of the season in Great American Ballpark in his last game, but 47 innings of work, only 1 home run allowed. Really good ground ball rate. And the Yankees, they struggled against them back on September 14th. So I do think that the Red Sox keep this game close. If this is a starting pitching matchup, we'll have to see because there's no official line. But give me the Red Sox plus 1.5 runs on the run line to end the night. And that's it. Those are the games for Sunday, September 25th. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave that like and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. Don't forget to check out the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown. And as always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.